Millionaire Heir couldn't hear anything until a street girl touched his ears. Ethan Christopher Wilson walked through the central square of Bellevue, wrapped in a silence that had lasted 2.5 years. The 12-year-old boy was heir to one of the largest fortunes in the region, but all the money in the world couldn't return to him, something he had lost in the same accident that took his mother. On that Tuesday morning, when a fine drizzle began wetting the cobblestones of the square, a dirty, barefoot girl approached him. Before the driver or the bodyguard could intervene, she gently touched his right ear and whispered something that made Ethan's eyes widen for the first time in years. Businessman Richard Wilson watched the scene from afar, near the ornamental fountain where he always waited while his son walked. At 42, he carried the weight of having been unable to save either his wife or his only son's hearing. When he saw that ragged girl approach Ethan, his first instinct was to signal Clarence, the bodyguard, to remove her. But something in Ethan's face made him hesitate. The boy had stopped walking and was staring intently at the girl, with an expression Richard hadn't seen since before the accident. It was as if a light had turned on in his dark eyes, so similar to his mother's. The girl couldn't have been more than 10 years old. Her brown hair was tangled, and her torn clothes suggested days spent sleeping outdoors. But there was something in her gestures, a delicacy in how she had touched Ethan's ear, that intrigued the businessman. Ethan tried to speak, but only moved his lips without sound. Since the accident, he had lost not only his hearing but also the will to try to communicate verbally. The doctors explained there was no physical damage to his ears, but something in his brain had completely blocked his ability to process sounds. The girl smiled and made a gesture with her hands, as if shaping something in the air. Ethan tilted his head, confused but interested. She then pointed to her own chest and then to his, before bringing her palms together near her heart. Richard approached slowly, curious despite his wariness. Clarence, a 50-year-old black man who had worked for the family for nearly a decade, remained alert, but followed his employer's signal not to intervene yet. "Who are you?" Richard asked the girl. She looked at him with clever eyes despite her vulnerable appearance. She had a small cut on her forehead, and her hands were dirty with soil, but her gaze conveyed an intelligence that surprised the businessman. "My name is Olivia, sir. I don't want money, I don't want anything. I just saw that your boy, he has the same face I had when I was little." "What do you mean?" Richard arched his eyebrows. Olivia gestured toward Ethan, who remained still, watching her every move with total attention. "He doesn't hear the world, but not because he can't. It's because he doesn't want to. I was like that too." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Richard felt a tightness in his chest. For 2.5 years, he had taken Ethan to the best specialists in the country. Neurologists, ear, nose, throat doctors, psychologists, therapists. All reached the same conclusion. Physically, there was nothing wrong with the boy's ears. The psychological trauma had created a barrier that seemed insurmountable. You also lost your hearing?" Richard asked, with a mixture of skepticism and hope. "For a while after she left and I was alone. For months, I couldn't hear anything. But it wasn't because I couldn't, it was because I was too afraid to hear bad things again." Ethan approached Olivia and tried to say something. She placed her hand on his chest and shook her head, then pointed to her own heart again. The boy seemed to understand something and put his hand over her heart. At that moment, Olivia began to make a soft sound, almost like a musical murmur. Ethan closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, Richard saw his son smile slightly. "What are you doing?" whispered Richard, almost afraid to break the moment. "I'm showing him that sound can be gentle, that not all noise hurts. Sometimes we need to feel the sound before we hear it." Dr. Robert Anderson, the family neurologist, always said Ethan's case was unique. The boy had witnessed the car accident that took the life of Jennifer, his mother. The impact had been so traumatic that his brain simply decided to disconnect from any auditory stimulus. But here was a street girl with no medical training, achieving something that renowned professionals hadn't managed in almost 3 years, awakening some kind of reaction in Ethan. "How do you know this?" asked Richard. Olivia removed her hand from Ethan's chest and looked directly at the businessman. Because I went through the same thing. When my mother left home, my father started shouting a lot. Every night he would shout, break things, say bad words. I would cover my ears, but it didn't help. Then one day I just stopped hearing anything. The girl's voice was gentle, but it carried a maturity that didn't match her apparent age. Richard realized there was something special about that child, something that went far beyond a simple coincidence. And how did you start hearing again? A lady who worked at the church near where I slept. She taught me that silence can be our friend, but it can't be our prison. She said we need to choose when we want to hear and when we want to stay silent. Ethan had opened his eyes and was staring at Olivia. For the first time in a long while, Richard saw genuine interest on his son's face. It wasn't just passing curiosity. It was as if he had recognized something familiar in her. Mrs. Hope taught me that when we don't want to hear because of the pain, we can choose to hear beautiful things first, like the sound of the heart, of breathing, of the wind in the leaves. Clarence approached discreetly and whispered in Richard's ear, "Sir, perhaps we should take the boy home. It's starting to rain harder." Richard looked at the dark sky and then at Ethan, who for the first time in years seemed reluctant to leave somewhere. "Olivia, where do you live?" The girl lowered her gaze and shuffled her bare feet on the wet ground. "For now, at the old train station. But it's not a problem, sir. I just wanted to help your boy." "At the abandoned station?" Richard knew the place. It was a ruined building where some homeless people sought shelter. "It's temporary. I'll find another place soon." Ethan tugged on his father's coat sleeve and gestured toward Olivia. It was obvious he didn't want her to leave. Richard found himself facing a dilemma. His conservative upbringing made him wary of anyone who approached his family, especially considering the fortune they possessed. But at the same time, it was the first positive reaction he had seen in Ethan since the accident. "Clarence, take us home. Olivia, would you like to continue talking with Ethan? Perhaps in a more protected environment?" The girl hesitated. Richard noticed she was genuinely surprised by the invitation. "I don't want to be a bother, sir. And I don't want you to think I'm trying to get something. I'm not thinking that. At least, not now. I'm thinking about my son." During the drive to the mansion in the Broadmoor neighborhood, Richard watched through the rearview mirror as Ethan and Olivia interacted. They didn't speak. Ethan couldn't, and Olivia seemed to respect his silence. But they communicated through gestures and glances in a way that deeply touched the businessman's heart. Olivia looked out the car window with wide eyes. It was evident she had never been in such a luxurious vehicle. But it wasn't greed that Richard saw in her eyes. It was innocent admiration and a bit of discomfort, as if she didn't feel deserving of such treatment. The Wilson mansion stood atop a hill, surrounded by meticulously maintained gardens. When the electronic gate opened, Olivia let out a small gasp of admiration. "Your house is very beautiful." "Thank you. Ethan, why don't you show Olivia the garden?" Ethan nodded and gestured for Olivia to follow him. It was the first time in months that Richard had seen his son take any social initiative. Mrs. Margaret, the housekeeper for over 15 years, appeared at the main door. She was a 60-year-old woman with graying hair always tied in a perfect bun, and a posture that revealed decades of working in family homes. "Good afternoon, Mr. Richard. Lunch is ready, but—" She paused upon seeing Olivia. "Who is this child?" "A new friend of Ethan's. Margaret, prepare a bath for her and see if there are some clothes that might fit." Margaret looked from Richard to Olivia with an expression mixing surprise and suspicion. Richard knew her well enough to understand she was asking 1,000 questions mentally. "Of course, sir, I'll prepare everything." In the gardens, Ethan showed Olivia the stone fountain, the rose bushes, and the small bridge over the artificial pond. The girl delicately touched the flower petals, as if it were the first time she had seen something so beautiful up close. "Your father must love you very much to make such a beautiful house." Ethan smiled sadly and pointed to a photo he always carried in his pocket. It was a picture of him with his parents, taken just months before the accident. Jennifer smiled radiantly, embracing her husband and son. Olivia looked at the photo carefully and then placed her hand over Ethan's heart again. "She's here, isn't she? Your mother is here." Tears began to stream down Ethan's face. It was the first time he had cried since his mother's funeral. Richard, watching them from the porch, felt his own heart tighten. Olivia didn't try to comfort him with words. Instead, she sat on the stone bench beside him and simply stayed there, in respectful silence, while Ethan released a pain he had held on to for years. "You know, I miss my mother too. She didn't pass away like yours, but she's far away, very far. And sometimes I'm so afraid of forgetting her voice that I prefer not to hear anything." Ethan looked at her through the tears and nodded. For the first time, he had found someone who understood exactly what he felt. When Margaret called them for lunch, Ethan gestured for Olivia to come along. The girl hesitated, looking at her dirty clothes. "I don't think I'm dressed to eat at your table." Richard appeared behind them. "Margaret prepared a bath. After lunch, if you want, you can stay a bit longer to talk with Ethan." "Are you sure, sir? I don't want to cause any trouble." "You're helping my son. That's not trouble. It's a blessing." After her bath, Olivia came down, wearing a simple dress that had belonged to Jennifer as a child. Margaret had found the piece stored in the closet, and despite showing reluctance, admitted it fit the girl perfectly. "You look very beautiful, Olivia," said Richard. "Thank you, sir. It's been a long time since I've felt truly clean." During lunch, Richard asked careful questions about Olivia's life. He discovered she had lost contact with her mother 3 years ago, when her father started having problems with drinking. Her mother had left home promising to return for her, but never got in touch again. "And your father?" He left too. He said he couldn't take care of me alone. Since then, I've been around, at acquaintances' houses, sometimes on the street. But I always manage." The maturity with which the girl spoke about her situation deeply touched Richard. She showed no self-pity, only a resigned acceptance that was both admirable and heartbreaking. Ethan gestured something to his father. Richard had learned to interpret some of his son's basic signs. "Ethan wants to know if you can stay here tonight." Olivia almost choked on her juice. "Here? At your house? Sir, I can't accept that." "Why not?" It's because I'm not part of your family. Not, and people like me don't stay in houses like this." Richard felt a pang of sadness, realizing how Olivia had internalized her social status. "Olivia, look at my son. Look into his eyes." She obeyed. Ethan was looking at her with a pleading expression, as if her presence were the most important thing in the world. "In 2.5 years, this is the first time I've seen hope in his eyes. If you can help him, I'll do anything to make it happen." "But I'm not a doctor, sir. I don't know if I can really help." "You've helped more in one morning than all the specialists in 3 years. That night, Olivia slept in the guest room, in a bed with soft sheets and fluffy pillows. It was the first time in years that she had a safe roof over her head and a bed just for herself. Richard couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Ethan's reaction, the instant connection between the two children, and the real possibility that Olivia could be the key to helping his son. But he was also worried. He knew nothing about the girl's past beyond what she had told him. As a successful businessman, he was used to investigating before making important decisions. But as a desperate father, he wanted to believe he had found a miracle. The next morning, Ethan woke up before everyone and went straight to the room where Olivia was staying. He found her already awake, looking out the window at the garden. "Good morning," she whispered, even though she knew he couldn't hear her. Ethan smiled and gestured, pointing to the garden and then to her. Olivia understood that he wanted to show her more things. In the gardens, she sat on the grass and invited Ethan to do the same. Then she placed her hands on the ground and signaled for him to imitate her. "Feel?" she asked, tapping lightly on the soil. Ethan shook his head, confused. Olivia picked up a small stone and dropped it on the earth. Then she took Ethan's hand and placed it where the stone had fallen. "Now you'll feel, not here." She dropped the stone again. This time Ethan felt the vibration through his hands. His eyes widened in surprise. Everything makes noise, even when we don't hear it. The noise becomes vibration, becomes movement, becomes life. During the following week, Olivia spent every day at the Wilson house. Richard had made the decision to give this experiment a chance, at least for a while. She developed a series of exercises with Ethan. She taught him to feel vibrations, to notice changes in people's breathing, to read facial expressions more carefully. It was as if she were reconnecting Ethan with the world through other senses. Mrs. Margaret watched everything with growing suspicion. During a conversation with Richard, she expressed her concerns. "Mr. Richard, don't you find it strange that a street girl knows so much about hearing problems? What if she's pretending all this to get something?" "Margaret, you saw Ethan's reaction. That can't be faked. But sir, you know nothing about this girl. Where she came from, who her parents are, whether she's involved with dangerous people." Richard knew Mrs. Margaret spoke out of genuine concern, but he also sensed there was something more. The housekeeper had always been very protective of Ethan, especially after the loss of Jennifer. Olivia's presence represented a shift in the household dynamics, and changes always brought discomfort. "I'm hiring a private investigator to check her background, but in the meantime she stays." "As you wish, but I think we should at least speak with that doctor who treats young Ethan." Dr. Robert Anderson arrived at the mansion on a Thursday afternoon. He was an elegant man in his 50s, with an impeccable reputation in pediatric neurology. Richard explained the situation and asked the doctor to observe Ethan interacting with Olivia. For nearly an hour, Dr. Robert watched the exercises the girl had developed. "It's interesting," the doctor said later privately with Richard. "She's using techniques effectively employed in occupational therapy and music therapy. They're not conventional methods for psychosomatic deafness cases, but they have scientific basis." "So you think it might work?" "Richard, in 3 years treating Ethan, this is the first time I've seen him show genuine interest in reconnecting with external stimuli. If this girl is achieving that, I'd say it's worth continuing. But I'd like to incorporate these activities into a more formal therapeutic program, and I'd also like to speak with Olivia about where she learned these techniques." When Dr. Robert spoke with Olivia, she told him about Mrs. Hope, the church lady who had helped her. "She taught me that sound is just one part of communication, that we can talk with the heart, with our hands, with our eyes, and that when someone doesn't want to hear because of pain, we need to teach them that beautiful sounds exist too." "And how did she do that?" "She would sing softly, have me put my hand on her chest to feel the vibration. She taught me to pay attention to breathing, to the heartbeat. She said these are the first sounds we hear when we're in our mother's womb." Dr. Robert was impressed by the sophistication of the techniques Mrs. Hope had taught the girl. They were methods based on real principles of neuroplasticity and sensory therapy. "Do you know where I can find this lady?" Olivia became sad. "She passed away 2 years ago. She was very elderly and became ill, but before she left, she made me promise that if I found another child who couldn't hear, I would try to help. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The revelation that Olivia was merely fulfilling a promise made to a deceased lady deeply touched both Richard and Dr. Robert. There were no hidden interests, no elaborate plans. It was simply a child trying to honor the memory of someone who had helped her. During the following weeks, Dr. Robert incorporated Olivia's techniques into a formal therapeutic program. 3 times a week, Ethan had sessions with the doctor, but every day he practiced the exercises with Olivia. The progress was slow but steady. Ethan began reacting to more subtle vibrations, noticing when someone approached through air movements, sensing the difference between calm and agitated breathing in people around him. But it was during a specific episode that the first major breakthrough occurred. It was a Friday afternoon when Daniel Wilson, Richard's younger brother, showed up at the mansion unannounced. Daniel was a 38-year-old single man who had always had a complicated relationship with the family's wealth. "Richard, we need to talk." "About what, Daniel?" "About this situation, this girl who's living here." Richard immediately noticed the tone of disapproval in his brother's voice. "Olivia is helping Ethan." "Richard, you're being naive. Think about it. A street girl appears out of nowhere, just happens to know techniques to help your son, and now she's living in your house. Doesn't that seem suspicious to you?" "Daniel, you've seen Ethan's progress. I saw a boy desperate for attention latching onto anyone who shows interest in him. That's different from medical recovery. The conversation was happening in the library, but their voices were rising." Olivia, who was playing with Ethan in the garden, noticed the tension through the open windows. Besides, Richard, have you stopped to think about the legal implications? You're sheltering a minor without court authorization. If her parents show up, if Child Protective Services finds out, you could have serious problems. Richard hadn't thought about that issue. In his concern for Ethan, he had ignored the legal aspects of the situation. Daniel, I can't just send the girl away now. Ethan is finally showing progress. Or so you think. Richard, you're emotionally compromised. You can't see the situation clearly. At that moment, Olivia entered the library with Ethan. The girl had noticed something was wrong and Ethan seemed anxious. Sorry to bother you, Mr. Richard. Ethan is worried. He senses when people are tense. Daniel looked at Olivia with an expression that mixed distrust and disdain. And you're the famous miracle worker. My name is Olivia, sir. Olivia, how old are you exactly? 10 years old, sir. And where did you learn these techniques you're using with my nephew? Olivia looked at Richard, unsure how to respond. She could tell this man wasn't there with good intentions. A lady taught me, sir. What lady? What's her name? Where did she live? Daniel, this is an unnecessary interrogation, Richard intervened. Richard, these are basic questions you should have asked weeks ago. Ethan positioned himself beside Olivia, clearly showing protection. It was evident he had understood that his uncle was being hostile toward his friend. Mrs. Hope, sir. She worked at Grace Community Church, downtown. Daniel mentally noted the information. And your parents? Where are they? I don't know, sir. What do you mean you don't know? A 10-year-old can't just not know where her parents are. Tears began to form in Olivia's eyes. Richard realized his brother was being deliberately cruel. Daniel, that's enough. No, Richard. You need to hear this. This girl could be a runaway. She could be involved with dangerous people. She could be used by someone to get close to our family. My parents abandoned me, sir, said Olivia with a courage that surprised everyone. They said they couldn't take care of me. I didn't run away. I'm not involved with bad people, and no one sent me here. I just wanted to help Ethan because I know how bad it feels not to be able to hear the world. The firmness in the girl's voice silenced Daniel for a moment, but he quickly resumed his aggressive stance. And how can I be sure that's true? Ethan, who had remained quiet throughout the argument, suddenly did something that shocked everyone. He stepped in front of Olivia and gestured vigorously at his uncle with an angry expression on his face. It was the first time in years that Ethan had shown any kind of strong emotion. Richard was surprised by the intensity of his son's reaction. Ethan is angry with you, said Olivia, translating the boy's gestures. He's saying you can't talk to me like that. Daniel was visibly uncomfortable with his nephew's reaction. Richard, you see, that girl is already manipulating Ethan, turning him against the family. I'm not manipulating anyone, protested Olivia. I only translated what he was gesturing. And how does a 10-year-old girl know how to interpret such specific gestures? Because I pay attention to him, because I care about what he's feeling. The sincerity in Olivia's voice was undeniable. Even Daniel seemed momentarily touched by her response. Richard made a decision at that moment. Daniel, I appreciate your concern, but Olivia stays. If you have doubts about the situation, I will investigate formally. But she's not leaving while she's helping Ethan. Richard, you're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Daniel left the house visibly irritated. Richard knew that wouldn't be the last time his brother would cause trouble. That evening, Richard had a serious conversation with Olivia. Olivia, my brother raised some important questions. I need to formalize your situation here. What does that mean, sir? It means I'll contact the proper authorities to regularize your stay, and I'll also look into your background, not because I distrust you, but because I need to protect all of us. Olivia remained silent for a moment. Mr. Richard, if you find out it's better for me to leave, I'll understand. Olivia, I don't want you to leave, but I need to do things properly. Can I ask a question? Of course. Why doesn't your brother like me? Did I do something wrong? Richard sighed. How to explain to a 10-year-old the complexities of family dynamics and social prejudices? My brother doesn't know you, Olivia. Sometimes people fear what they don't understand. Does he think I'm here because of the family's money? Olivia's direct question surprised Richard. Maybe. I can prove I'm not. How? When I leave, I'll leave behind everything you've given me. I'll leave exactly as I arrived. Olivia's declaration deeply moved Richard. There was a dignity in how she spoke about her situation that was both admirable and heartbreaking. Olivia, I don't want you to leave exactly as you arrived. I want you to stay and be part of our family. But I'm not part of your family. You could be if you want. The conversation was interrupted by Ethan, who appeared in the room gesturing animatedly. Olivia smiled when she saw him. He's saying he has something to show me. Ethan took Olivia's hand and led her to the piano in the music room. It was a magnificent instrument, a Steinway grand that had belonged to Jennifer. Ethan sat on the bench and placed his hands on the keys. Then he looked at Olivia and signaled for her to come closer. He wants me to play something, said Olivia, surprised. Richard approached too, curious to see what would happen. Olivia sat beside Ethan and played a key softly. Ethan placed his hand on the piano's wood and his eyes widened. Did you feel that? Asked Olivia. Ethan nodded vigorously. It was evident he had felt the sound's vibration through the instrument. Olivia began playing a simple melody, using only one hand. Ethan kept his hand on the piano with an expression of complete wonder on his face. My mother taught me this song, said Olivia, before she left. The melody was sad but beautiful. Richard recognized it as Beethoven's Für Elise, though played more simply. Ethan closed his eyes and for the first time in years seemed to be truly hearing music, not through his ears, but through his entire body. When Olivia finished playing, Ethan had tears in his eyes. He gestured something and then pointed to the piano. He wants me to teach him how to play, translated Olivia. Over the following days, Olivia taught Ethan to feel music through the vibrations of the piano. It was extraordinary progress, considering he had refused to go near the instrument since the accident. Jennifer had been a talented pianist, and the sound of the piano had always been present in the house before her departure. For Ethan, the instrument represented yet another lost connection with his mother. But now, through Olivia, he was finding a new way to connect with music, and by extension, with his mother's memory. Richard hired a private investigator, Frank Peterson, to verify Olivia's story. Frank was an experienced man who primarily worked on corporate cases, but occasionally took on personal assignments. After a week of investigation, Frank brought a detailed report. The girl's story is true, Mr. Wilson. I found birth records, school history up to 3 years ago, and several people who confirmed her family situation. And the parents? The father, Michael Thompson, has a history of alcoholism and was last seen 2 years ago in a shelter in the countryside. The mother, Sarah Thompson, worked as a cleaner in several houses until she disappeared 3 years ago. No one knows where she is. And Grace Community Church? I confirmed the existence of a volunteer named Hope Oliveira, who passed away 2 years ago. Several people in the community confirmed that she helped children in vulnerable situations, including Olivia. Richard felt relieved and at the same time sad. Olivia's story was real, which confirmed her honesty, but it also confirmed the tragedy of her situation. There's something else you need to know, Frank continued. Olivia has a maternal uncle, Charles Thompson, who lives in Lake Tahoe. He lost contact with the family, but may have legal rights to the girl. Did you speak with him? I tried, but he recently moved. I'm trying to locate his current address. The information about the uncle created a new concern for Richard. If there was a living relative who could claim custody of Olivia, the situation would become much more complicated. Meanwhile, Ethan continued to progress rapidly with Olivia. They had developed their own language, mixing gestures, facial expressions, and touches. Ethan had even started making some sounds, small murmurs that were the first steps toward recovering his speech. Dr. Robert was genuinely impressed with the progress. Richard, in 30 years of my career, I've never seen such rapid recovery in a case of psychosomatic deafness. Olivia truly has a special gift. Do you think Ethan can fully recover his hearing? It's possible. His brain is clearly reconnecting with auditory stimuli. If we continue at this pace, I'd say there's a real chance of full recovery. The possibility of Ethan fully recovering his hearing filled Richard with hope and gratitude toward Olivia. But it also made him realize how dependent he had become on her. What if she had to leave? What if the uncle showed up and wanted to take her? What if Ethan regressed without her? It was a rainy Tuesday when Mrs. Margaret made a discovery that would change everything. She was tidying Olivia's room when she found, hidden under the mattress, a small cloth bag. Inside the bag were some old photos, documents, and an ID card. Mrs. Margaret examined the documents and was shocked by what she discovered. Olivia's age wasn't 10 years old, as she had said. According to the ID card, she was 12 years old. But that wasn't all. There was also a certificate showing that Sarah Thompson, Olivia's mother, had worked as a music therapy assistant at a rehabilitation clinic. Mrs. Margaret rushed to tell Richard about the discovery. "Mr. Richard, the girl lied about her age. And there's something else. Her mother worked with music therapy." Richard examined the documents with growing attention. "This changes everything, Margaret." "How so, sir?" "If her mother worked with music therapy, that would explain how Olivia knows so many specific techniques. She didn't just learn from Mrs. Hope, she also learned from her own mother." "But why would she lie about that?" Richard thought for a moment. "Perhaps because she's afraid we'd discover her techniques weren't just intuition, but formal knowledge. Maybe she thinks it would diminish the value of what she's doing. Or perhaps she's hiding something more serious." Richard decided to confront Olivia directly. He called her for a private conversation in the library. "Olivia, I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to be completely honest with me." The girl immediately noticed Richard's serious tone. "Did I do something wrong, sir?" "You lied about your age." Olivia lowered her gaze, confirming the accusation without words. "Why did you say you were 10 when you're actually 12? Because people feel more sorry for younger children, and because I'm small for my age, so it's easy to believe." The brutal honesty of the answer surprised Richard. "And your mother? You didn't tell me she worked with music therapy." Olivia sighed deeply. "I didn't mean to lie about that, sir. It's complicated." "How is it complicated?" "My mother worked at a clinic, helping children with problems. She taught me many things about how to help people who can't hear or speak properly." "And why didn't you tell me this from the beginning?" "Because I was afraid you'd think I was here for personal gain, that I knew who Ethan was and came looking for you on purpose." Richard began to understand Olivia's fears. "But that's not what happened, was it?" "No, sir, it was all coincidence. I saw Ethan in the central square and recognized his manner, because my mother taught me to notice when someone has the same problem I had." "Olivia, why don't you trust me enough to tell me the complete truth?" Tears began to roll down the girl's face. "Because every time I tell the truth about my life, people send me away. They think I know too much, or that I'm too problematic, or that I'll bring trouble." The pain in Olivia's voice deeply touched Richard. He began to understand that the girl had learned to hide parts of her story as a survival mechanism. "Olivia, I won't send you away because of the truth, but I need you to trust me. Do you promise?" "I promise." Olivia took a deep breath and began to tell her complete story. Her mother, Sarah, had worked as a music therapy assistant at Harmony Clinic, which specialized in treating children with hearing impairments and communication disorders. Sarah had no formal training, but had learned practical techniques through years of experience. When Olivia was little, she often accompanied her mother to work and observed therapy sessions. Sarah taught her daughter basic exercises, saying that one day she might help other children. When Olivia's father started drinking excessively, Sarah lost her job because she was frequently absent. The family's financial situation deteriorated rapidly. My mother became very sad when she lost her job. She said helping children was the most important thing in her life. When she left, she made me promise that I would use what she taught me to help other children if I ever had the chance. And Mrs. Hope? Mrs. Hope helped me when I got sick after my parents left. I went a long time without eating properly, sleeping on the streets. She took me to the church, gave me food, and taught me other things my mother hadn't taught me. What kind of things? How to use breathing to calm nervous people. how to do touch exercises to relax tense muscles, how to teach someone to feel music through their body when they can't hear. Richard realized that Olivia had received an informal but sophisticated education in therapeutic techniques. It wasn't just intuition, but real knowledge applied with natural sensitivity. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I was afraid you would think I was pretending not to know anything, or that I was trying to deceive you." "Olivia, what you're doing with Ethan is extraordinary. The fact that you have formal knowledge only makes it more impressive, not less. You're not angry with me? I'm not angry. I'm impressed by your courage and dedication." That night, Richard spoke with Dr. Robert about Olivia's revelations. "This explains a lot," said the doctor. "The techniques she's using are truly sophisticated. If her mother had experience in music therapy, Olivia had access to knowledge that normally only trained professionals possess. Does this change anything in Ethan's treatment?" "Actually, it improves everything. Now I understand why her methods are so effective. She's not improvising, she's applying proven techniques intuitively. And the prognosis? If we continue at this pace, I believe Ethan could recover his hearing completely within a few months." The possibility of full recovery filled Richard with a mixture of hope and gratitude toward Olivia, but it also made him realize that he needed to make an important decision about the girl's future. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The next morning, Frank Peterson called with important news. "Mr. Wilson, I found Olivia's uncle. Charles Thompson lives in Lake Tahoe and works as a mechanic. I spoke with him on the phone." "And what did he say?" "It's complicated. He knew his sister had disappeared and that Olivia was alone, but he didn't look for the girl because he's facing financial difficulties. He and his wife have 3 young children and can barely support their own family." "Does he want custody of Olivia?" "He said he would like to help, but that he can't take care of another child at the moment. He suggested it might be better for her to stay where she is, as long as she's safe and well cared for." "Would he come here to see the situation?" "He said yes, if you allow it." Richard felt torn. On one hand, it was important for Olivia to have contact with her biological family. On the other, he feared that the uncle's presence could complicate the situation. He decided to speak with Olivia before making any decision. "Olivia, we found your Uncle Charles. He would like to visit you." The girl's reaction was one of surprise and nervousness. "Uncle Charles? I haven't seen him in years, since before my parents left. Would you like to see him?" I don't know. What if he wants to take me away?" "He said he can't take care of you right now. But I think it's important for you to see each other." "What if after seeing me he changes his mind? What if he decides I have to go with him?" Richard realized Olivia was genuinely frightened by the possibility of having to leave the life she had built at the mansion. "Olivia, I won't let anyone take you against your will. You have my word. But he's my real family. You're not obligated to keep me." "Olivia, family isn't just about blood. Family is who cares, who loves, who is present. You're part of our family now." The conversation was interrupted by Ethan, who came running and gesturing excitedly. Olivia smiled when she saw him. "He's saying he managed to hear something in the garden." "What?" "The sound of the little birds. He says he heard it very faintly, but he heard it." Richard felt his heart race. If Ethan was starting to hear environmental sounds, that meant his recovery was progressing faster than expected. "Are you sure?" Ethan nodded vigorously and pulled Richard and Olivia into the garden. He pointed to a tree where several kingbirds were singing and put his hand to his ear, making a concentrated expression. Suddenly a huge smile spread across Ethan's face. He nodded and pointed to the birds again. "I heard," he whispered, almost voiceless from years of disuse, but clearly audible. They were the first words Ethan had spoken since the accident. Richard felt tears streaming down his face. Olivia hugged Ethan, also crying with joy. "I knew you could do it," she said. "I knew you would hear the world again." That night, Dr. Robert came to the house for an emergency evaluation. After examining Ethan and doing some basic tests, he confirmed that the boy was indeed regaining his hearing. "It's extraordinary," the doctor told Richard. "The recovery is happening faster than I ever imagined possible. How long do you think it will take for a full recovery? If we continue at this rate, maybe a few weeks. It's almost a miracle." The next day, Charles Thompson arrived in Bellevue. He was a man in his 40s, with calloused hands and simple clothes, but with a kind look that vaguely resembled Olivia's eyes. The meeting took place in the living room of the mansion. Olivia was visibly nervous, hiding behind Richard as if seeking protection. "Olivia," Charles said softly, "you've grown so much. You were so little the last time I saw you." "Hi, Uncle Charles. Come here. Let me give you a hug." Olivia hesitated for a moment, but then approached and hugged her uncle. Charles hugged her affectionately, and Richard could see tears in the man's eyes. "I'm sorry I didn't look for you sooner. When I found out that Sarah and Michael had left, I should have looked for you." "It's okay, Uncle. It's not okay. You're my niece, my responsibility. I failed you." Charles turned to Richard. "Mr. Wilson, I can't thank you enough for what you've done for Olivia. The investigator told me the whole situation. Olivia has been a blessing to our family, Mr. Thompson. She saved my son. I wish I could take her with me, give her a real home, but the truth is I can barely support my own family. My wife is pregnant with our 4th child, and a mechanic's salary isn't enough even for us." "Mr. Thompson, Olivia has a home here if she wants to stay." Charles looked at his niece. "Olivia, do you want to stay here?" The question put Olivia in a difficult position. Richard could see the conflict in her eyes. "Uncle, I really like being here. Mr. Richard and Ethan are very good to me. But you're my real family." "Olivia, real family is the one who takes care of you, who loves you, who gives you opportunities to grow. Mr. Wilson can give you things that I can't. But I don't want to abandon you either." Charles hugged his niece again. "You're not abandoning me. You're choosing what's best for your life, and that makes me happy, not sad. Mr. Thompson, Olivia will always be welcome to visit you whenever she wants, and you will always be welcome here too." "Thank you, Mr. Wilson. That means a lot to me." Before leaving, Charles had a private conversation with Olivia. "Little one, I want you to know that your mother would be very proud of you. What you're doing, helping this boy, is exactly the kind of thing she always wanted to do." "Do you think she'll ever come back?" Charles sighed sadly. "I don't know, little one. Your mother was very lost when she left, but I believe that wherever she is, she knows you're a special girl. Can I visit you during vacation?" "Of course you can, and I'll come see you whenever I can." After Charles left, Olivia seemed more relaxed and secure about her situation. Her uncle's blessing for her to stay at the Wilson household had removed the last obstacle for her to feel truly part of the family. In the following weeks, Ethan's recovery accelerated dramatically. He began to hear conversations, music, and even whispers. His speech also gradually returned, first with simple words, then complete sentences. The first "thank you" he said to Olivia made the girl cry with joy. During this period, Richard began seriously considering formalizing Olivia's adoption. He consulted lawyers specializing in family law and initiated the necessary legal procedures. "Olivia, how would you feel if I formally adopted you as my daughter?" The question took the girl by surprise. "You want to adopt me?" "I do. You're already part of this family in our hearts. I'd like to make it official too. But I'm not from the same social class as you. Won't people find it strange?" "Olivia, social class is a human invention. What matters is love, character, kindness. And you have more of those than anyone I know. What if Ethan recovers completely and doesn't need me anymore? Olivia, do you think I want you here only because of what you did for Ethan?" The girl hesitated. "I want you here because you're an extraordinary person. Because you brought light into this house, because you taught me that family is much more than blood. Can I think about it for a while?" "Of course. There's no rush." That night, Olivia had a long conversation with Ethan, who could already hear and speak almost normally. "Ethan, your father wants to adopt me. That means I'd be your real sister. I'd really like that, said Ethan, his voice still slightly hoarse but clear. You're already my sister in my heart. But don't you think it'll be strange? I came from the streets. I have no money. I don't know if I'll fit into this world. Olivia, you saved me. You brought me back to the world. If it weren't for you, I'd still be trapped in silence. You would have gotten better anyway. No, I wouldn't have. All the doctors, all the treatments, nothing worked. Only you managed to help me. Why? What did I do differently? Ethan thought for a moment. You understood my pain. You didn't try to force me to get better. You showed me it was possible to choose to hear beautiful things. The next day, Olivia gave her answer to Richard. Mr. Richard, I'd really like to be adopted by you, but I have one condition. What is it? I want to keep helping other children like I helped Ethan. It's a promise I made to my mother and to Mrs. Hope. Olivia, that's not a condition. It's a dream we'll achieve together. What do you mean? We'll create a foundation, a place where children with hearing, speech problems or trauma can get help. You'll be part of it, but first you'll study, graduate, learn even more techniques. Olivia's eyes filled with tears of happiness. You would do that? We'll do it together as a family. The adoption process took several months, but was finally completed in a simple ceremony at the courthouse. Olivia Thompson became officially Olivia Wilson. Ethan, now fully recovered, made sure to be present at the ceremony. When the judge declared the adoption official, he clapped so loudly that everyone in the courthouse smiled. But the story took an unexpected turn a few weeks after the adoption. Olivia was in the garden practicing piano when a woman approached the mansion's gate. Clarence, the security guard, intercepted her, but she insisted she needed to speak with the young lady who lives here. Tell him I'm Olivia's mother, the woman said. Clarence was shocked. Richard had told him Olivia's whole story, including her mother's disappearance. Mr. Richard, there's a woman at the gate saying she's the mother of the girl Olivia. Richard felt his stomach tighten. Sarah Thompson had been missing for years. Why was she showing up now, right after the adoption was finalized? Bring her inside, Clarence, but stay close. Sarah Thompson was a woman in her mid-30s, thin, wearing simple but clean clothes. Her eyes were just like Olivia's, but they carried a deep sadness. When Olivia saw her, she froze for a moment before running into her mother's arms. Mom, it's you, she cried, hugging Sarah tightly. My daughter, my little one, how you've grown, how beautiful you are. Richard watched the scene with mixed emotions. He was happy for Olivia to reunite with her mother, but he also feared what this might mean for the future. Where have you been all these years? Asked Richard. It's a long story, said Sarah, not letting go of Olivia. I had to leave to sort out some personal problems I couldn't solve with Olivia around. What kind of problems? Sarah hesitated. I was sick, sir. Severe depression. When my husband started drinking and I lost my job, I had a very bad crisis. I was afraid I might harm Olivia, so I decided to seek treatment. For 3 years. Yes, I spent some time in a psychiatric clinic, then in halfway houses. Only now have I managed to stabilize and get a job again. Olivia looked at her mother with a mix of joy and confusion. Mom, why didn't you take me with you? Why didn't you tell me where you were going? Because I was very sick, honey. I couldn't even take care of myself. Leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I thought it was best for you. Mom, I was all alone. Dad left too. I know, honey. I know. And please forgive me. When I got better, I started looking for you. That's how I found out you were living here. Richard felt he needed to clarify the situation. Mrs. Thompson, Olivia has been legally adopted. She's my daughter now. Sarah looked at Richard with a complex expression. I know, sir. The investigator who helped me find her told me everything. He told me how you took care of her, how she helped your son. And what do you intend to do? I don't know. I want my daughter back. But I understand it might not be what's best for her right now. Olivia was visibly torn between the joy of reuniting with her mother and the fear of having to leave the life she had built. Mom, I missed you so much. But now I have a family here too. Mr. Richard and Ethan are my family. I understand, honey, and I'm happy you found people who care for you. Mrs. Thompson, why don't you stay for dinner with us? We can talk calmly about the situation. During dinner, Sarah shared more details about her 3-year absence. She had spent 18 months in psychiatric treatment, then another year in a halfway house for people in recovery. In recent months, she had gotten a job as a cleaning assistant at a school and a small apartment. I know I can't offer Olivia what you can, said Sarah, but she's my daughter and I love her. Mrs. Thompson, no one is questioning your love for Olivia. The question is what's best for her now. Ethan, who had remained quiet for most of the conversation, suddenly made a suggestion that surprised everyone. Why can't Mrs. Sarah live here too? Everyone looked at the boy, surprised by the idea. Ethan, it's not that simple, said Richard. But why not? The house is big. Olivia would have both fathers, and Mrs. Sarah could work here if she wanted. The innocence of Ethan's suggestion touched everyone present. Sarah began to cry. Your son has a very beautiful heart, Mr. Wilson. He learned that from Olivia. Richard found himself facing a complex decision. Legally, Olivia was his daughter now, but emotionally, Sarah was the biological mother who had fought mental illness to recover and reunite with her daughter. Mrs. Thompson, how about we try a temporary arrangement? You stay here for a few weeks, get to know our routine, and we see how everyone feels about the situation. You would do that? Even though I have no legal rights over Olivia now? I would, because Olivia loves you, and that's what matters. During the following weeks, Sarah adapted surprisingly well to the mansion's routine. She insisted on helping with household chores, despite Mrs. Margaret's protests, and spent hours talking with Olivia about the lost years. Richard watched the dynamic between mother and daughter closely. It was evident there was genuine love between them, but also that Olivia had grown and changed during the years of separation. One evening, Olivia sought Richard for a conversation. Father Richard, can I ask a difficult question? Of course, daughter. Is it possible for a person to have two fathers at the same time? Richard smiled. Olivia's question echoed Ethan's innocent suggestion. In the heart, it's always possible. I love my mother. I missed her so much, but I also love you and Ethan. You saved me when I was lost. Olivia, you don't have to choose between loving your mother and loving our family. But legally, I can only have one father, right? Legally, yes. But emotionally, you can have as many fathers as you want. After many conversations and reflections, they reached an unusual but functional agreement. Sarah would be officially hired as coordinator of the future foundation Richard intended to create. She would use her experience in music therapy to help develop the foundation's programs. She would live in a smaller house on the property, allowing her to be close to Olivia while respecting the new family dynamic. Olivia would divide her time between the two families, maintaining bonds with both. It's unconventional, admitted Richard's lawyer when they presented the arrangement. But if it works for everyone involved, I see no legal problems. The Hope Foundation, named after the woman who had helped Olivia, was officially created 6 months later. Sarah became the program coordinator, working with Dr. Robert to develop innovative music therapy methods. Olivia, now 13, studied at a private school but dedicated her afternoons to the foundation, helping other children with problems similar to what she and Ethan had faced. Ethan, fully recovered, became an enthusiastic advocate for the foundation, often telling his story to inspire other families. The first child the foundation helped was Peter, a 9-year-old boy who had lost his hearing after trauma. Using the techniques Olivia had developed, he began showing progress within weeks. It's amazing to see how Olivia works with the children, Dr. Robert commented to Richard. She has a natural gift, but also the technical knowledge she inherited from her mother. She found her calling. More than that, she transformed her own painful experience into a tool to heal others. 1 year after the foundation's creation, it had already helped more than 50 children. The story of Ethan and Olivia spread through the media, inspiring other families to seek help. Daniel, Richard's brother, who had initially distrusted Olivia, became one of the foundation's biggest supporters. I was wrong about the girl, he admitted to Richard during a visit. She wasn't after money. She was after purpose. We were all searching for something when she appeared. She just helped us find it. Mrs. Margaret, who had also been skeptical at first, became a second grandmother to Olivia. That girl transformed this house, she told Sarah one afternoon. She brought life back to these walls. She was always special, replied Sarah. Even when she was little, she had this ability to understand others' pain. 2 years after the foundation was created, Olivia received an invitation to speak at an international conference on alternative therapies for auditory trauma. At 15, she became the youngest speaker in the event's history. When I was little and couldn't hear the world, she said on stage, I thought silence was my enemy. But I discovered that sometimes silence is just our heart asking to hear different things. In the audience, Richard, Sarah, Ethan, and the whole family watched with pride as Olivia told her story and the techniques she had developed. It's not about forcing anyone to hear, she continued. It's about teaching that there are beautiful sounds in the world, that it's worth opening your heart to them. After her speech, a woman from the audience approached Olivia. My daughter has the same problem Ethan had. Could you help us? Of course, replied Olivia. That's what we're here for. That evening, during the celebration dinner, Richard made a toast to Olivia, who taught us that sometimes the greatest miracles come wrapped in the simplest packages. To all the families we're still going to help, added Sarah. To the family we've become, said Ethan. And to Mrs. Hope, who started it all, Olivia concluded. 5 years had passed since that first morning in the central square. The Hope Foundation had become a national reference in treating childhood auditory trauma. Olivia, now 17, had been accepted into a prestigious university to study psychology with a specialization in music therapy. Ethan, also 17, had become a musician and often played piano during the foundation's sessions. Sarah had remarried to a teacher she met during a foundation conference. They lived in the house on the property and were an integral part of the extended family they had created. During Olivia's high school graduation party, Richard called her aside for a private conversation. Daughter, I have something to give you. He handed her a sealed envelope. What is this, Dad? A letter I wrote the day you arrived at our house. I saved it to give to you on your graduation day. Olivia opened the envelope curiously. The letter said, Dear Olivia, today you came into our lives like an angel disguised as a street child. You touched my son's ear and brought him back to the world. But more than that, you brought our family back to life. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I know you are special. I know you have a greater purpose than any of us can imagine now. One day, when you're an adult and helping other families like you helped ours, I want you to remember, you're not just someone who helps others. You are proof that miracles exist and come to us in the most unexpected ways. With all my love and eternal gratitude, Dad Richard, Olivia cried as she read the letter. Dad, I'm the one who should be thanking you. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose. Olivia, you already had all that inside you. We just provided the space for it to flourish. During the party, many families who had been helped by the foundation were present. Children who had regained their hearing, parents who had found hope again, professionals who had learned new techniques. Peter, the first boy the foundation helped, now 12 years old with perfect hearing, insisted on giving a speech. Olivia taught me that not hearing isn't the same as not listening, that the heart has ears too. Thank you for teaching me to listen with my heart first. As the night progressed, Olivia looked around and saw all the lives that had been touched by that first meeting in the central square. Ethan, now a confident and talented young man, playing piano to liven up the party. Sarah, his biological mother, radiant and healthy, chatting animatedly with other parents. Richard, his adoptive father, who had risked everything to give an unknown girl a chance. Mrs. Margaret, who had become the grandmother she never had. Dr. Robert, who had believed in a child's unconventional method. And dozens of other families whose lives had been transformed. You know what's most amazing about all this? Said Ethan, approaching Olivia during the party. What? You came to us to fulfill a promise you made to Mrs. Hope, but in the end you ended up fulfilling promises you didn't even know you had made. How so? The promise to give yourself a family, the promise to give hope to hundreds of other families, the promise to show that love has no social barriers. Olivia smiled, thinking of Ethan's wisdom. You know what Mrs. Hope told me before she passed? What? That when we help someone hear again, we learn to hear things we had never heard before. And did you learn? I learned to hear the sound of a family being formed, the sound of hearts healing, the sound of hope growing. Ethan smiled. And I learned that silence isn't the opposite of sound. It's just a pause between beautiful sounds. End of story. So, dear listeners, what did you think of this moving story of overcoming and family love? A street girl who completely changed the life of a millionaire heir and his family, proving that life's greatest treasures are priceless. Olivia taught us that family isn't just blood, but those who care, love, and are present in our lives. Tell us in the comments, do you believe Olivia made the right decisions throughout the story? And what did you think of the Wilson family's transformation? Leave your honest opinions below. We'd love to know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one.